Hi there and welcome. I hope the sight or sound of a baby bird or bunny or squealing human greets you this week, and that you're able to feel some of the wonder that is living beings who create and nurture new life. And I hope that these brand new beings are nurtured, protected, and given what they need to live decent lives. I wish this for you, for your neighbors, and for strangers here and around the globe. Today is Thursday, May 1st. My name is Grover, and this is Grover Reads the News. I have a news update for you. Would you like to hear it? If so, keep listening. If not, I'll offer again soon. And with that, here's the update. First, I have an update about May Day protests. Today, millions of people around the world are expected to take to the streets as part of annual May Day demonstrations, including at least 1,300 protests planned in the U.S. today. The holiday, known as International Workers' Day or International Labor Day, honors the struggles and achievements of workers and the labor movement. In Tokyo, Japan this morning, reporters from the Associated Press said images and worries about Donald Trump's global policies and the potential increase of cost of materials and job loss hung heavily on the march. March participants' demands ranged from demands for higher wages and gender equality to healthcare, disaster relief, a ceasefire in Gaza, and an end to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Tadashi Ito, a union construction worker, said he worried about rising prices for imported raw materials. Quote, "Everybody is fighting over work, and so the contracts tend to go where the wages are cheapest," he said. "We think peace comes first, and we hope Trump will eradicate conflict and inequalities," unquote. Follow me on Substack, and I will repost some images and additional reporting about what protests across the world looked like for the rest of May Day. Next, I have U.S. news about immigration and attacks on families. There is so much important news happening right now about how immigrants, their families, and U.S. citizens are being treated by immigration authorities in the United States. It's intense and seemingly relentless at this point. I'm going to share a few news items here today as an update, but do know that it is not an exhaustive list of all that is going on around the U.S. or what needs to be responded to with collective resistance and mutual aid for people who are harmed by the state's anti-immigrant activities. First, at least 3 children who are U.S. citizens, including a 4-year-old who was receiving cancer treatment, were forced out of the country with their mothers after their mothers attended a regularly scheduled check-in meeting with immigrant authorities and were denied regular due process and removed from the U.S., reports CNN. One family's lawyer was present at the scheduled meeting where the mother was arrested, but denied access to her client as the mother was put on a plane with her child and flown to Honduras. Quote, "It is illegal and unconstitutional to detain for deportation, or recommend deportation of a U.S. citizen," CNN reports. Alana Odoms, executive director of the ACLU of Louisiana, told CNN on Sunday, "These are mothers, these are pregnant women, these are children. These are people with terminally ill or very serious medical conditions who were law-abiding residents, who were checking in with ICE as they had been instructed to do under the orders of supervision. If ICE can do this to these mothers and these children, if ICE can do this to students on college campuses, none of us are safe from this kind of lawlessness." Unquote. Next, the Miami Herald reports that a woman, 44-year-old Miss Marie Angie Blase, died in an ICE detention center in Florida after complaining of chest pains. Geraldine Joseph, executive director of the Haitian Bridge Alliance, an advocacy group, said, "Our sincere condolences to her family, loved ones, and the entire immigrant community. Her death is a result of cruel, inhumane policies and treatment of immigrants." We will continue to push for accountability on behalf of those who unfortunately find themselves detained, trapped without proper care or due process." Unquote. Next, a woman and her daughters, all of whom are U.S. citizens, were woken from their sleep in the Oklahoma City home that they had recently started renting when 20 armed men busted through the door, ordered the family outside in the rain in their underwear, and began taking their belongings, including cash that was her life savings. The woman and her daughter had moved to the home weeks earlier from Maryland and were waiting for her husband to be able to join them. The armed men didn't identify themselves and apparently had a warrant for a person who no longer lived at this address. As of the latest reports, her belongings haven't been returned, and no agency involved in terrorizing this family has made any formal apology or expressed regrets to news organizations that are investigating the case. In Vermont, Mohsin Madawai, a Palestinian green card holder and former Columbia University student activist for Palestinian rights, was arrested 2 weeks ago while on his way to a naturalization interview. He walked out of immigration detention on Wednesday after a federal judge in Vermont ordered his release as he awaits the resolution of his immigration case in federal court, reports The Guardian. Mahmoud Khalil, the first Columbia University Palestinian and permanent resident arrested for his speech activities, remains in an ICE detention facility. This week, a U.S. District Court judge ruled that Khalil's appeal case can proceed in his New Jersey courtroom rather than at an immigration court in Louisiana. And finally, in another chilling first of this administration, the FBI arrested a Milwaukee County Circuit Judge, Hannah Dugan, last Friday morning at the county courthouse after she allegedly sent federal immigration agents away from a hearing that she was conducting. She ordered the agents to speak to a chief judge instead of arresting a person involved in the case that she was conducting. She then created the conditions for the person that immigration officers were seeking to leave the courtroom without crossing ICE agents. The person was ultimately chased down by ICE agents outside the court and arrested. Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley said in a news conference, quote, "Even if you are an undocumented immigrant, we need you to be able to understand that court is a safe place for us. They may be a witness in a crime. They may be a victim in a crime. And if they are a witness, for example, we need them to be able to come to this building and feel safe to be able to talk, to actually be a witness," unquote. Before she was a judge, Dugan worked as a poverty attorney and executive director of Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Milwaukee. Friday afternoon, hours after her arrest, a sign remained hung on the door to her courtroom, reported the Washington Post. It instructed anyone who, quote, feels unsafe coming to courtroom 615 to contact the court clerk to request an online hearing. Judge Dugan's case is expected in court on May 15th. Next, we have international news about Canadian elections and Gaza. Canadians voted to elect Liberal Party leader Mark Carney to be Prime Minister. His deeply conservative opponent had been polling well ahead of Liberal Party leaders in the months before Trump began his rhetoric about taking over Canada and imposing tariffs. Carney said the win was important to recognize that, quote, "our world has fundamentally changed and that Canada's old relationships with the United States, its longtime ally and trading partner, is over." He said, "We are over the shock of the American betrayal, but we should never forget the lessons. We have to look out for ourselves." On Friday, the World Food Program announced that they had run out of food to deliver as part of humanitarian aid to Gazans, as the state of Israel maintains a 7-week blockade on humanitarian aid, restricting 116,000 tons of food from the World Food Program that is awaiting at aid corridors. Since Israel broke the Gaza ceasefire agreement, Israel's forces have declared about 70% of Gaza either a military, quote, red zone or under evacuation orders, reports the Washington Post. displacing more than 420,000 people, according to the UN Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, leaving people with few places to live their lives and secure the food, water, and shelter needed to live. Next, we have nature news about mushroom homes. More than 4 billion metric tons of cement is manufactured annually, contributing to about 8% of global carbon dioxide emissions, reports CNN's Cameron Greaser. This means if cement production were a country, it would rank third after China and the US based on 2023 emissions. Cement makes up a large portion of most standard home building processes because it is durable and a load-bearing material. But what if we could live in houses that are just as sturdy, but made of fungi and bacteria? A research team in Montana is trying to do just that. Quote, "We asked, what if we could do it a different way using biology? That's the vision," said Chelsea Haveran, who is an assistant professor of mechanical and industrial engineering at Montana State University, Bozeman. They grew dense, spongy tangles of mycelium, the root-like structure that connects fungal networks underground, as a framework to create a living, self-repairing building material. The study authors then introduced bacteria capable of producing calcium carbonate, the same chemical compound found in corals, eggshells, and limestone, to create fungal mycelium which served as scaffolds. The bacteria created crystalline nets of calcium carbonate around the fungal threads, and then it hardened the gooey mycelium into stiff bone-like structure, and it made a brick. While there are concerns about respiratory health and the ability of these structures to maintain their strength in changing conditions, that will require many more studies before it can be used at scale by the public, this research shows a possibility of using living, active, and more sustainable materials to shape the worlds we may live in. Thanks for joining me to hear the news today. A lot else happened in the 2 weeks since the last news update. The Pope died. Portugal and Spain lost electricity for more than 24 hours. Tesla profits sank. So while all that was happening, I was taking care of my life deeply close to home, and I hope that you enjoyed your best of nature news recap from last week. If you're feeling weary and worn, I hope you get some good rest and connection this week. I'm headed to a pride parade this weekend in my home community and looking forward to connecting to people. I'll be handing out week cards inviting people to listen to Grover Reads the News. If you're talking with people who are feeling down and overwhelmed, either they're avoiding the news or checking it obsessively, be a pal and share the link with them. And thanks to everyone who's liked or given a review of Grover Reads the News on your podcast app. I see you and I appreciate it. It helps others reach this audio and hopefully feel a little less alone. Okay, everyone, I'm rooting for you. I'm rooting for your kids and your sweeties. I'm rooting for all of us on the spinning rock in space to get through this together and come out more peaceful and more just. Until next time, be well.